Alright, boys and girls, I'm going to be doing the stream in the progression room channel. So if you are watching the stream and you want to be able to talk, ask questions, stuff like that, you want to join my channel, but push to talk is enabled only, no voice chat. So if you want to do voice activation, sorry, I can't deal with shit mics tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So the question is, and has been, and will always be until launch, where are we going, right? Why we haven't decided yet? What's the next plan? So I've been watching, collecting information on each server, which guilds are going there, what's happening, what's going on, what's the best possible option for the guild. And some of you guys have been paying attention to what I've been saying about that. We've kind of come down to two potential choices, and it's up to you guys to come up with the results. But first, I'm going to talk about each realm. So Globulus, I'm going to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of this realm. And this isn't something that I haven't talked about before. If you watch any of the previous videos that we put out, previous meetings you've attended, I explained things several times over, but I'm just going to go over it one more time for people who are either new to the guild or need reminding. So, Globulus. If we compare Globulus to each other community that's kind of established right now, Globulus is one of the only realms, and I think Fairbanks is actually pretty equally this way, though. But if we compare to like Harad or Faralina or even Whitemane, Globulus is one of the only realms that has a naturally forming community. And what I mean by that is, Harad and these other realms I just mentioned, they kind of had a coalition to force population onto them. So these guilds may have ties, like individually, kind of ties together. They may have played with each other in the past or what have you. But there's nothing natural about how the community is forming. These guys are just piling on to a realm just for the sake of establishing some kind of population. And really this mindset comes from like the Nostalria super mega servers, right? Where you have like 20,000 people online at one time, and you have dynamic spawns, and you have the ability to enable that kind of realm pop. Well, that's not realistic with Classic. And Blizzard has said this. They've come out with 3 different blue posts saying, like, get off of Harad. There are too many people playing on the server. You are going to have multiple hour queues, if not longer. So this is something that I'm extremely concerned about, and this is what I was worried about. So these coalitions, I was part of them, a part of several of them. I knew of about 5. I'm sure there were more, though. And the East Coast coalitions, they all piled on Harad. And the reason they chose Harad, and I'm going to talk about this again at the podcast that's going to be after this meeting with Ooze. They chose Harad because Faralina is the East Coast realm that all the streamers are going to. All of the streamers are going East Coast. Big ones like Soda Poppin', Tips Out, these guys are going to East Coast because they're going to be using Europeans to carry their guild because they can't recruit or run a guild on their own. And so you have all these Europeans from Method going to carry them. So that was probably the main decision that forced them to East Coast. The other reason that people went to Harad is because the Brazilians chose to go to Thalnos. And I don't know if you've ever played with the Brazilian population in Dota or WoW or whatever, but a lot of people don't like to play with Brazilian players, and there's a language barrier that people want to avoid, and there's some other problems. But the main reason is, again, Brazilian. So that's, of the original 3 realms that were announced for East Coast PvP, you only have Harad left. So naturally, it just got ridiculous, and everybody goes there, right? I'm talking about from my personal research, and I'm going to talk about this again during the podcast after this. There were around 12,000 players just from guild rosters alone. There were over 130 guilds that registered to that realm as their main choice. And I don't know about you, but I'm trying to avoid that because what happens when layering goes away? What happens when we want to kill world bosses? What happens when to the price of an item like Black Lotus, the scarcity just goes crazy, and it's just not realistic of a server to play on. I don't want to have to log in 4 hours before raid time to get into the server at raid time. So anyway, you have some fairly complicated situations with server choices just based on that alone. Actually, things have been kind of stable with the different realms. There haven't been too many big movements, and the most of the big movements that have happened have been from Harad to Whitemane, and then Harad to Stalag, and Harad to whatever. But now we're starting to see Whitemane guilds go to other servers. So we have some guilds going to Blamu and the other realm, which I don't remember off the top of my head. I think it's Scarum. So there's a lot of movement going on right now, but Grobulus is stable. Grobulus is not moving around. So I'm going to talk about some of the key characteristics of Grobulus that is really attractive to me. So if you watch the original guild meeting that we did way back in May, I talked about some of these things. I'm going to go over them again really quickly. So Grobulus is RP PvP, and that rule set means a couple things. Players within that community are going to naturally want to socialize and create events that happen that are non-incentivized. And what I mean by that is, you remember back in the day when you were like, maybe it was 2005 and you were in some random guild that didn't even raid, and you were leveling, and somebody in guild chat said, hey, let's go raid Astronar. And they formed a raid group, and you guys went over there and you just killed guards, and it was epic. You guys are kind of like playing the game to have fun and not necessarily to accomplish any sort of objective. Now, this is something that's going to happen on this server, because they don't need any kind of reward to tie them to what they want to do. They can just play the game. So yes, this aspect can be seen as kind of a casual aspect, but really what that means to me is there's just stuff going on 24/7. There's something happening. There's some kind of event, or there's some kind of, but this, why this is good and why it separates itself from a normal RP server where this stuff also happens is it's going to be a PvP realm. And so that means that, and this is something that I've been talking to other guild leaders about in the hidden channels on the Grobulus Discord, that the guild leader only channels. We're talking about having sovereignty maps in the world where each guild will have kind of a map of control, and they'll know, like, basically you go out and you roam for PvP. This is something that doesn't happen in normal WoW. This is something, there's no purpose, there's no incentive there. But on this kind of server, there's kind of like an RP incentive, and what that means for us, a guild that doesn't RP, is we can go out of our way and kill people. We can always find an engagement, we can always find a source of honor anytime. And this is big. This is like kind of custom ideas, but people are talking about arena tournaments, they're talking about duel tournaments, things that aren't going to happen. They really are not going to happen very often, if at all, on normal PvP realms. And this is really attractive to me and a lot of people who want a PvP. Something else that I think people need to consider is the retainability of a population on a server. So imagine it's phase 3, and Blizzard decides they want to make a little extra money, and they want to open up transfers. So transfers happen, and I go from Harad to another East Coast realm. If I'm on one of the smaller realms, and I'm the biggest guild, the most progressed guild, the most serious guild, I could actually kill the server if things kind of chain react and people start following me, my guild. So, and I've seen this so many times. If you look at one of the most popular realms from Vanilla to Wrath the Lich King, Kill Jaden, this happened when, in Wrath, a guild called Cuties Only transferred off. And this was like on Horde side, this was one of the most progressed guilds. They had top US kills, clears, whatever, throughout all of Wrath and some of TBC. And when they left, they left this huge power vacuum of people who didn't want to leave. But they actually, in reality, they just took a bunch of guilds with them to another realm, and in Cataclysm it didn't work out too well for that realm. And while that realm remained popular and high pop, the level of competition never recovered. So there's some instability there when it comes to transfers and such things like that. And why I think we're insulated from that is because if our realm develops a strong community, people are not going to want to leave. They're going to make friends. They're going to socialize. They're going to have a natural reason to log in. And RP as a concept, as a activity, is naturally like a sociable activity, right? You're talking to people. You're creating stories. You're creating events. And there's just kind of like, I don't know, there's a lot of deepness to that. And I think that it's going to make people want to stick around. In addition, there's only one RP PvP realm, so there's only one place to play for these guys who want to engage in that kind of activity. So I think I've hyped up Grobulus enough. A lot of you guys are only interested in playing on Grobulus, and I'm going to talk about Fairbanks real quick. So Fairbanks doesn't seem like there's much on the surface, right? There's a couple reasons that I'm interested in rolling there, and firstly, I'm afraid that if we roll Grobulus, I'll lose a significant number of players who are just against rolling on RP servers, because there's a stick there. I mean, no matter what I tell you guys, there's always going to be a stigma tied to RP, and that that stigma is always going to be equated to a casual mindset, which is not necessarily the case. I've met hardcore RP, like hardcore raiders that were on RP servers. You know, they're not necessarily mutually exclusive, but there is a stigma attached, right? So there's some people in this Discord or otherwise who are just not going to roll there. And there are some recruitment problems associated with that. When I try to recruit players on the more broad Discords, when I mention that we're going to play on Grobulus, they basically are not interested anymore. Some people that are otherwise very interested in our guild are no longer interested. And that's a big concern to me for long-term progression. However, I think if we establish ourselves in a dominant position on Grobulus, we won't have a problem recruiting. But if we're unable to, it could yield bad results in the future. So Fairbanks gives us a couple opportunities. There's another guild called Fury, and if you know who Scarm and you know who Ooze are, they kind of hop in our Discord. At least Ooze does, hops in our Discord and chats a little bit every now and then. We're going to be able to coordinate a lot of things and do a lot of things that we would never be able to do on any other server. The server is one of the more medium pop servers. Now, a medium pop server is still higher than the highest pop server back in retail vanilla, so consider that. But we can control world bosses, basically like take our guild and double the size of it, and that's what that kind of presence we'll have on Fairbanks if we roll there. And that means that we can establish cartels on certain economic items. We can create any kind of PvP. Like, we can control so much. We can control the entire faction's PvP brackets. We can do all kinds of stuff. And it'll be a lot less work than it would be on Grobulus. On Grobulus, I'll have to network, and our PvP leads will have to network with every PvP guild. We'll have to make all kinds of decisions and choices that we wouldn't have to make on Fairbanks. Basically, things are laid out a lot easier if we're able to coordinate with a large guild. Now, there may be another large guild that's willing to work with us, but you have to understand that those ties already exist, so it's not as much work to me. But it's really up to you guys, like I said. So, and you know, this could change. Any of these factors could change in a moment's notice. There could be a chain reaction of guilds that shift between Grobulus and Fairbanks. They could go to a different realm, or a bunch of guilds can move to Fairbanks and Grobulus and make us not want to play there. And that's why you guys have to keep your ears and eyes open on the channel that talks about our server choices up to launch, because we could change it the very last minute, the last 5 minutes prior to launch. We could change what realm we're going to. But I'm trying to make that decision as best I can, as early as I can. And I think things are really stable at this point. But Blizzard could shuffle the deck and deal us a bad hand if we're not paying attention. So, all right. So I got a straw poll up here, and I'm gonna link it in the or if we can link it in the social channel on Discord, and you guys can fill it out, somebody could get it linked. And I'm going to put the results up on the stream. And I'm going to leave them up there for a few minutes, but generally what I'm trying to get at is I want to know who is going to leave if we go Grobulus. Because if we do make that decision, I think people will leave and have already left. Because we didn't go White Mane, we didn't go to Harad, or we didn't go wherever. But I think most people that have been around, I mean, the guild's been around since 2007, right? So there are a lot of people who just want to play with us. They love the community in the guild. They love the people around here, and that's what they're after. But the new recruits is what I'm concerned about. And then there are some people who have reservations. So my plan is I'm gonna make an announcement with this link, the straw poll link, and I'm gonna leave it up until tomorrow, and then we're gonna discuss it in our officer meeting. And I'm going to stream that officer meeting, and we're going to discuss how many people we're losing, whatever. If you guys have concerns about anything we talk about at the meeting, especially server choice, please directly message me. Like, I'm not going to be upset if you decide that you can't follow us for whatever reason. I'm not going to be upset with you, and you're always going to be welcome in the guild. I'm never going to hold a grudge. And, it's your game. You can play it how you want to. I'm not going to be mad about it. But you should absolutely, make your voice known right here and now while you have time. So I'm going to go ahead and move this off, and we're going to continue with the meeting. But please continue to fill that straw poll out when you have time to. Okay, so let's talk about leveling teams. So if you look on the right side, these are all the leveling teams I've kind of made. So if you take... How many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So 15 times 5, what is that, 90? So 90 different players worth of 5-man teams that we've kind of established. Some of these players, some teams are missing like one player here or there, but mostly we have a large number of players. And this could be the best way to level for certain people. But the key factors when it comes to this are if I can match your schedule to 5 people, and if I can match your comp to 5 people. So, for example, if you are adamant as leveling as a Moonkin, it's going to be really hard for me to match you to a team. Or something like that. If you're going to play Melee Hunter or some meme build, it's just not possible. Or if you're a Feral Druid and you're not willing to tank, it's really hard for me. One other problem that I keep having with these leveling teams is people are not using their name in Discord for the leveling document. So when I go and form your team and I try to add you to a hidden channel, which all these on the right side, all those channels are hidden to everybody except for the people that are on that team. I can't add you, and therefore I can't add you to a team. So you have to use the Discord name that you use, or you need to change your name in Discord to match whatever you put on the leveling sheet or guild roster. Otherwise, there's no point in even filling it out. If you have a schedule, like, if you have a schedule that's really strange, like you can only play from 3 a.m. to 8 a.m., I'm probably not going to be able to match you to anybody, unfortunately. But if you fill out your document and you say, oh, I'm going to be able to play for 12 hours. Okay, but what 12 hours? How can I match you to anybody if you don't tell me when you're actually able to play? So when you fill this out, if you're not part of a leveling team yet, and you've already filled it out, you probably want to fill this out again, because that's probably why you're not part of a leveling team yet. You need to be as descriptive as possible when it comes to filling this thing out, with your schedule especially. If there are players who you want to play with, try to reach out to them before filling it out, and make sure that you guys have a schedule that matches. Otherwise, don't put them, because there's so many people that are like, I want to play with Kurthos, but then you realize that Kurthos lives in Japan and you can't match his play times. Or you realize that Kurthos is going to be playing for 24 hours straight and you're only going to be playing for 5. There are a lot of factors like that prevent people from playing together, and it makes it a headache. But I'm spending, I don't know, like anywhere from 4 to 8 hours a day trying to get people onto teams and organize this. I really need you guys to cooperate with me and meet me halfway. I'm trying to get as many teams established before Friday as I can, so you guys can maybe do some practice runs over the weekend, or get in touch with each other, or coordinate your schedules, or whatever you want to do. But so the leveling team thing, by design, what I'm trying to do is get you networking with other people in the guild. So people who have been part of the guild for years and people that just went in the guild yesterday, I want you guys to be talking to each other and hanging out together. Like that is the entire purpose of this. The secondary purpose is I want the classes that are naturally slow levelers, like warrior, priest, or whatever. I want you guys to be able to get to 30 or so, while being able to get ahead of the pack. And of course, if the team falls apart at 25, then it's still done some purpose, right? Don't be upset with anybody in your team if they have to drop out, 3 days in or 2 days in or 1 day in. This is just my attempt at organizing the guild in such a way that people can play together and get to know each other. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. It's only 5% faster, but to me, 5 people leveling at the same speed is better than 1 person leveling faster than everyone else. In my opinion, that's better. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. So let's talk about launch raids. So how is it going to work? I get this question constantly. Week 1, 2, and 3 are going to be largely up to who hits 60 first, and that's just how it's going to work. If you hit 60 week 1, guess what? You got a raid slot in the raid week 1. If for some reason I have on my roster of almost 200 people, I have 100 hit 60, which is unrealistic, in 4 days. If they all hit 60, then great. Maybe I can form 2 raids, but realistically, I'm probably going to have somewhere between 15 and 30 people hit 60. And I'll probably have a full 40-man if I consider anybody above level 55 who has completed their attunement. However, it's not realistic. We may end up in Molten Core clearing bosses, and we may end up in Molten Core with some kind of cross-guild pug or something like that. But I don't think it's realistic to kill Rag week 1 with our guild. And that's not saying that I don't want to. And that's not saying that you guys can't prove me wrong. But I don't think it's realistic at this juncture. Now, I mean, surprise me if you can. Week 2 is way more realistic. And there's a couple reasons, like quintessences, consumables, and such like that. Vanilla is heavily a consumable-based game. You can bypass mechanics. You can brute force bosses down with just raw consumables. Basically, that's how we're going to get through Molten Core. And Molten Core is going to be harder than BWL progression. It's going to be harder than probably the first half of AQ40 progression. Just off of this fact alone. We're going to be going in, we're trying to do more with less. And anytime you do that, people burn out, the grind is brutal. So what my recommendation is to you, and a lot of you guys have already taken your days off, so it's kind of hard to do this, but if you, for example, are able to maximize the number of days off during our Molten Core progression, I would do that over putting in, and I'd rather you hit 60 at week 2 than and have days off to push into Molten Core, then take days off and do 24 hours straight per day or whatever, and hit 60 by Saturday for maybe a 2 boss kill or a two boss clear or something like that.
Speaking of which, the servers could be fucked on launch, so
absolutely. And we don't know the stability. I'm hoping it's gonna be stable, but if we look at the stress test was pretty brutal. Or even the name creation, a lot of people had trouble getting into the server. So I mean, that remains to be seen. But yeah, raid times are finalized, and I don't have them in any slides, but somebody can copy and paste them, I'm sure, from our recruitment macro. It's 9 p.m. East Coast, and I think the only off day right now is Friday or something like that, or maybe Monday, something like that. But we have a planned raid every day of the week, basically, right now. So, but okay, so here's here's something that I can explain about raid times. If you've never raided vanilla, then you won't understand this, because in TBC, Wrath, Plus, raid times are pretty standard, right? You have a set raid day, you log in, you raid, you log off. It doesn't matter what content's left. In vanilla, that doesn't work that way. You raid literally 7 days a week. You will clear all content every week. From Molten Core to Nax, you will clear everything. Now, it doesn't mean that each individual player needs to go to each raid, but every raid will happen and be cleared. At least in this guild, and in this guild also will have multiple raid teams, so it'll be cleared probably multiple times. Now, the benefit and the flexibility that gives us is if you can, for example, Team 1 raids Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday, or Sunday, or something like that, and then Team 2 raids Thursday, Friday, Monday. For the first half of the month, your schedule allows you to raid with Team 1, and the second half of the month, your schedule allows you to raid with Team 2. We can probably allow you to do that. We could probably facilitate your schedule. You know, a lot of gamer dads, this is a big benefit and the reason that you're probably in the guild. But when we're talking about all of vanilla content as a whole, you're talking about 5 40-man raids. You're talking about 2 20-man raids with 3-day lockouts. You're raiding 9 of them, a week potentially. There's a lot of stuff going on. So just start thinking about content differently. The way that we want to structure the guild is that if you log in any day of the week, 9 p.m. East Coast time, there's a raid happening. Doesn't matter what day of the week it is. So just something to consider. Second raid. Second raid forms sometime after the first clear of MC. Whenever we kill Rag, we'll kind of it'll be something we play by ear, but it'll be based on the number of people hitting 60, the number of people ready to move to another team, and if we can stabilize the first raid team and not set it up for failure for the following week. But it likely starts off as a pug, and we're going to recruit out of that pug, because if you look at our roster right now, and I have a little pie graph that's based on our guild roster and our breakdown of what's in our guild, I don't know how many of you are actually going to hit 60. And this is something I'm actually trying to prepare for. I don't know if you guys are going to make it. I don't know if you guys are going to enjoy vanilla. I don't know if you're a tourist. And I can't know. You know, there's only so much information I can gain from just having conversations with you. And I have to be prepared for that. So if you've seen the roster, you probably noticed there are a lot of people I've recruited to the guild. Now, probably we have around 215 people on our roster right now. Probably around, 30 of those people are not going to be playing with the guild already. This roster was formed in July 3rd, I think, and it's almost launch day, and we've lost probably 20 to 30 people since that time. But we've also gained around, probably 150. So you have to understand that there's always a retention problem. There's always turnover with vanilla, and it's just part of the game. Hopefully that's much less in private servers and things that we've experienced in the past with a larger recruitment pool. But it's something we have to always take note of and prepare for. So spots are going to be competitive. And for some casual players, this may sound really bad, right? Oh man, I'm never going to get a raid spot. I'm only going to raid one time a week, whatever. That doesn't mean you're not going to get a raid spot. That doesn't mean you're not going to get gear. You're going to get gear. If you're a casual player, just show up when you can. We'll get gear to you when we can. You meet us halfway, we'll meet you halfway. We'll get you something. Now, don't expect something crazy. You don't expect the Thunder Fury. You don't expect the Nef tier if you're only raiding 1 day a week. Something like that. But you should be fine, likely. We need the whole gambit between casual and hardcore players, and you have a place here. Especially when it comes to PvP. I think that is Feral Druid. This little guy right here. But I expect the second raid to be formed by October. So that's my expectation. All right, so we talked about consumables a little bit. Now I'm going to explain one of the things that I kind of briefed maybe 2-3 weeks ago at a guild meeting about a consumable leaderboard. How this is going to work, and it's something I'm going to be working on this week when I have some time. There's going to be a leaderboard for based on how many consumables you donate to the guild for early progression. And I don't know how long this contest is going to run. It's probably going to run until we get our first Ragnar's clear. But we're going to have some kind of breakdown of what items are the most valuable or something like that. And we're going to have a leaderboard of people who have donated things. And this is not going to necessarily equate to gear in game, because obviously some people are not going to have the same amount of time as others. However, we will be rewarding some things. Just don't expect like to get every piece of gear if you're donating 400 fire protection potions. You're not going to get 8 of 8 tier 1 or something if it drops, or you're not going to get a Zursong Mageblade and Toe Up in the same raid or something like that. We'll probably reward you for that effort, but it won't be ridiculous. You're not gonna see it equate exactly over. You know, we're gonna make the best decision for the guild. We're not gonna overgear somebody and piss people off. But what I can do is, while giving you gear for really showing some merit and being focused on progression, what I can do is I can use my IRL gold and buy you a piece of gear in real life. So if you don't know, the guild has some jerseys and hoodies and other merch, and this merch, the money from this goes back to the guild and gets reinvested in the guild. So that means like better graphics, better logos, more merch. There are some other things planned that we're not ready to talk about, but I don't personally see any of this money. So if you're concerned about that, but anyway, I'm going to buy your choice up to this price point. I'm going to buy you your choice of merch and mail it to you. If you are like the top of the leaderboard by the first rag kill. So it's kind of just an extra incentive to push. I know like probably nobody cares about this, and you know, some people might, but most people probably don't care about this, but it's just something fun to do in the guild. It's kind of a contest or something. And something you don't get to see in the slide is that on the back of it you can put your character name. So it's pretty cool. There's some hoodies and stuff. You can look at it in the Final Boss News channel. I think it's one of the top links. Alright, so that's pretty much it for the normal meeting, but I want to talk about Meili for a second because I had to miss the Meili meeting, unfortunately, and there's some things I want to talk about. So, some things that we missed they didn't put in those slides that I want to go over is Meili. There's something called the crit cap, and the crit cap exists for mostly it's on your white swings. It doesn't really exist for yellows because you'll never reach it with any gear in the game. But for melee swings, it does exist on dual wield. Doesn't really exist for two-hand builds. So what this means is, at some point you have too much crit, and it pushes it. You have too much crit compared to how much hit you have, and it pushes your crit off the roll table. So basically, consider you have like I'm not using the exact formula here, but I'm saying you have 50% crit, and you have 8% hit or 9% hit, and let's say of that 50% crit, 12% of that crit is actually wasted because for each point of hit you have, it enables another percentage of crit. So what I'm trying to tell you now, firstly, you need to join the Fight Club Discord and start reading. It doesn't matter if you're a rogue, doesn't mean if you're a handsmith shaman, doesn't matter if you're a warrior, you need to join the Fight Club Discord and start reading. The people in there are more informed than anybody in this guild about the deep mechanics of the game. They are Einsteins, they're 200 IQ geniuses that have nothing better to do than just crunch numbers. And it's effectively, if you're familiar with Elitist Jerks and the old school Theorycraft, this is the equivalent to Elitist Jerks for melee and tanks. This is the place you want to be. You need to read as much as you can on your class. There are a lot of differences between private servers and classic beta that you need to get informed about. But what I want to tell you right now, something they're not going to tell you unless you infer it yourself, is you need to keep hit gear for each slot. And you need to have a different gear set for different levels of world buffs, different levels of trash, bosses. You need to tailor your gear for each encounter. For example, if you're on a boss where there is a lot of ads that spawn that you need to be killing, boss that comes to mind off the top of my head right now, a Nubbarak, or a Nubbercon, rather, or Noth, or Gothic, or, you know, these in Nax, all these ad bosses, or in Uru, or, you know, all these bosses that have ads, right? You're spending some percentage of the time you're attacking level 62, 61, 60 mobs. You obviously don't need hit cap if you're doing that. You obviously don't need the same amount of hit. You obviously don't need the same amount of weapon skill, things like that. So what this means is you need to be building your gear set based on each encounter, and you should have on your item rack or outfitter or whatever add-on you're going to use, you should have a different gear set. Like, okay, this is my Magmadar set. It has a little bit of fire resist gear on it, but it's optimized. So if I know if my healers are weak this raid, I can, weak in the raid this week, then I can itemize for that. Or if I know that they're strong, I can take off, I can wear less stamina, I know I'm going to survive no matter what. You can itemize that way, but in addition to that, you need to consider your crit levels from world buffs. So based on that, you need to wear more or less hits, so you're not wasting crit you get from Rallying Cry of the Dragon Slayer or Songflower or what have you. This also goes for like trash. You should be wearing like less hit during trash and more crit, more throughput damage. This goes for casters, healers, tanks. It goes for everybody. But Meili specifically, you want to keep the best possible piece of gear that has hit on it for each slot. You don't want to get rid of these items. I'm talking like Voon's gauntlets that have 2% hit on them. Good luck finding another piece of gear that has 2% on gloves for hit. It's very rare. Shadowflame boots. Things that you think you replaced are probably better than you realize. Vanilla itemization is based on the utility of each item. Every item has its purpose. Even the worst looking item in the game has a purpose. There's these robes that exist in vanilla called Black Ashen robes. I'm going to show them to you on stream. They are fire resist stamina cloth robes. What boss fight will a mage ever wear fire resist on? Maybe if you're 2005 and you're fighting Ragnaros, you put some fire resist on your mages, but realistically, no. What fight you're going to use it on potentially is 4 Horsemen. As a rogue, you would wear that chest if you're a fire resist soaker. If we choose these fire resist soakers for meteors. Each item in vanilla is uniquely designed to have a purpose. Never dismiss an item in the game. Never do that. So I'm going to link that. I'm going to show those on stream real quick. All right. So here it is. Look at this. You wouldn't wear this normally, right? Now, that doesn't mean necessarily this is the best itemization for a rogue to wear on that boss, but it is one of the better possible pieces in terms of survivability. So maybe for the first kill you use this, maybe for the second, third farm kills you don't. Maybe for learning the fight you use this, but the point is it has a purpose. Okay, so I'm going to go over some of the things that we found from the beta recently that you may or may not have heard about. So, at the top, you see this weird graph, right? All these lines. Basically, what this is displaying is Wind Fury, the buff from whenever you White Swing proc on a Wind Fury. It results in a buff for attack power on that lasts until your next White Swing. So what this means is for 400 to 800 milliseconds, you get a buff, okay? So you can, if you play with this in mind, and you're talking about high levels of skill cap, We're talking about the highest levels of skill cap. You can time your abilities to go off of a Wind Fury proc if you're trying to fish for one. Additionally, you can read on this guy Meiji is like one of the greatest gifts to Melee community that it's better than anything out there. Like this guy, just his big brain, 3,000 IQ, 9,000 IQ guy. So he's collecting all this data, all this raw data on white swings. They're killing turtles in the beta, and they're getting data. Okay, so some of the things that he's found: Wind Fury on a proc. If you have a heroic strike queued, your Wind Fury, Sword Spec, or Hand of Justice, or Thrash Blade, or Iron Foe, any of those procs will use the on next attack. So if you have a heroic strike or cleave queued, and you swing with your sword spec and sword spec procs, it'll use heroic strike. It'll use cleave. This is huge. This is amazing. This is great for tanks. This is great for everybody. But it's huge for tanks. You kind of read through here and it talks about all this stuff. But another thing they found is that Battle Shout may be, for example, for Alliance, the best rage per global for threat if you're in a party with like a bunch of pets. I mean, some people knew this from back in the day, but we never knew the math on it. We didn't really know how it works out. They've tested it. It may be ridiculous. The problem is the limits with this kind of thing, this kind of meta, is you have to be in range of everybody for them to get the buff, for you to get the threat, right? So you have to kind of clump in like a 20-yard range. You're obviously not going to spec Booming Voice, unless there's a very, very niche reason for that. But it's huge. It's absolutely huge, especially for Alliance. Obviously, we're not going to Alliance, but there's still applications for this. Shield Slam doesn't proc Wind Fury, which just lends you to be... It just makes Fury tanking more desirable. Doesn't necessarily mean that Shield Slam or prop builder is obsolete or anything, but it makes you want to play Fury more often. Troll Berserking, I know I've said a couple times that Troll Berserking was 43%, but it's actually 30% for Warriors and Rogues, and it's different for each class. For 43% for Hunters and Shaman, and at this point in time, Mages and Priests were not tested, but I'm sure they've been tested on each of those class-specific Discord. Right here, Blood Fury scaling was found to only scale off of strength or agility. It doesn't scale off of raw attack power. Like the effect that says like green, it says like equip, increase attack power by 22 or something like that. That attack power does not apply to the scaling. Only strength for warriors, or strength and agility for rogues, or agility for hunters. These are the only scaling attack power bonuses with Blood Fury. So this actually affects what items you go after for now. So now, for example, on Horde side, an Orc Warrior will always prefer Quick Strike Ring over Ring of Karaji Fury. And if you compare those two items, they're basically the same. On Alliance, you want Quick Strike Ring because it has strength, because it scales with kings. On Horde, you don't really have anything that scales your stats except for the Heart of Akar buff, which increases your stats by I think like 15% or 10%. But now you have, if you're an Orc, you specifically want to go after the strength heavy items over attack power heavy items. And I'm sure this changes how Orcs play out, Orc Rogues. For itemization. I think it draws you more towards rogues, because if you look at tier 2.5, tier 3, there's a lot of pieces of gear that have a combination of strength and agility on them. So you guys probably, if you have some kind of spreadsheet or attack power equivalency points type item breakdowns, and you're trying to decide between items, you need to calculate this in too as a factor. And then if you look at this quest log on the right side, what this guy did is he went through and he found every quest that was thought of to maybe be in a later phase. But on the beta, he found that every one of these phases exists in phase 1. So at this point, I'm gonna address some questions I got in Discord, direct messages, and then I'll open up to questions after that, like in voice. So somebody said that we should probably change our stance on leveling. I don't think we should tell people to disregard week one. I'm not saying disregard week one. Uh, but I think a week one clear is less valuable if people burn out by week three because they spend too much time playing the game. But I mean, yeah, absolutely. If we can go for a week one clear, we want to, because that's our goal, right? We want to dominate the server. We want to be, the big boys on the Grob mob, right? If that's where we end up. And obviously, I want to do anything to enable that, but I'm not in the business of using people as leverage to get where I want to be. I'm not going to force you to play to the point where your parents take away your keyboard or something like that, or they get you committed because they think you're addicted to the game or something like that. I don't want it to impact you in real life. That's my concern. And this may be kind of like moving away from a hardcore mentality a bit, but my idea of this is if you don't handle your real life priorities, if you overdo it, like let's say for example, you're a kid, you're a teenager, you're 18, you're in high school, it's junior year, and you just let your grades go, and your parents take away your keyboard, they take away your internet, whatever. You're not really rating anymore, are you? So it's better to take care of your real life priorities and maintain a healthy balance with the game. Obviously, if you're a NEET and you just can do whatever you want with your life and you're completely sustained off of grandma's inheritance or whatever, then okay, go hard. I'm not gonna stop you. I'm not gonna tell you no. But please just have some foresight. So I'm gonna go and look at the stream chat and if there's any questions. All right. It doesn't look like we have any questions in the chat, so I'll open it up to Discord questions if anybody has anything. I don't have any questions. Some of you guys don't realize that maybe you're muted because you are voice activation. So if you have a question, you can whisper me in Discord or whatever. If not, I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream if I don't have any questions.
I got a question for you.
All right, go ahead. Hi. Double
Yo,
spins.
all right.
Or go ahead. WinCon, go.
So we have allegiances if we don't roll on Globulus, right? What's the allegiance situation with co-guilds look like if we roll Grob?
We don't have any ties to Globulus. Outside of, we have one of our officers is a member of the Discord community over there. We don't have any real ties to that server. It's just the optimal choice, and it's actually, if you've been in the guild for a while, I've been talking about trying to go to RPPVP for a long time, actually. I've been talking about it since before they announced that there weren't going to be RPPVP servers back in like April. I was talking about it in February, March. So it's just something that we think is a strategic gain. But yeah, we don't have any particular ties with anybody at this point. But we're looking. We're trying to keep an eye on things. But on Fairbanks, we have several ties. There are some alliance guilds that we would be working with. There would be some horde guilds we're working with. And it would probably be good for us. There would be some benefits to going there. We'd probably have better world boss control. We'll probably have better economic control. If they get a pattern, they're not going to charge us a fee, for example, or something like that. We would, vice versa, we would do the same thing. We'd try to create some kind of cartels over certain items. But, I mean, this isn't anything we couldn't do on our own. It's just, it would be easier, that's all. People who are talking about working with Alliance or they're like, what do you mean by that? There are certain things that we want to do. For example, I might ask, hey, is this guild's main tank online? Or like, hey, is this guild? For example, I might reach out to an Alliance player and be like, hey, do you guys have this item on the auction house? Or hey, do you guys have, what? I mean, there's so many things, and they could also give us intel like, hey, this other Alliance guild's about to go into Blackrock Mountain. We can ambush them and take the world bus from them and prevent them from getting like progressing in BWL or something. We could do all kinds of stuff, and especially in PvP aspects, there's a lot of intel we could gather from having contacts on the opposite faction.
I got a question.
All right, what's up?
I asked earlier if we were going to be doing any kind of specific item grinding, like designated to certain people, like things that are like on high prio at the start once we hit 60.
So, yeah, there's already a list actually, and I don't think it's publicly linked right now, but it's gonna be tied to that leaderboard. So, like, I'm gonna have an item quota. It's gonna say like, I need for the first 3 weeks, I need 400 fire protection potions, and it'll have a little bar. It'll say like 300 out of 400 gathered or something like that, and then I'll have a kind of a list of who's donated each number of them. So Double Spoons donated 10, Dat Grunt donated 20, whatever, and it'll track, and then I'll have a kind of a leaderboard of who donated the most items or whatever. So this is all tied together, this idea. All right, I got some DMs. So if you are level 60 fighting a level 60, you only with 0 weapon skill, you only need 5% hit. So you need to add hit to match. I don't know the roll table off the top of my head for like a level 61 and level 62, but I'm sure it's not hard to gather, especially if you go to the Fight Club Discord and you look at some of the documents they have in there. There's a lot of those kind of questions that are already answered that I don't have to answer. Tanks using crit stones instead of Wind Fury. This is because rage generation on Phoenix was like really borked, and you just had so much rage gen that Wind Fury, really the benefit is that you get a lot of rage from Wind Fury. If you don't need rage, then crit stones are really good, right? If you're playing an Impale build, which is a dead build, kind of dead build in will be in Classic, then you'll get more benefit from crit. That's not to say crit isn't good, but we don't really accurately know how like the best move. There's this weird information about Shaman like Flame Tongue being the best totem enchant for threat actually right now. This is kind of strange because nobody's ever said that, nobody's ever done that, but this is something that's kind of developed out of the Shaman Discord. And they said like it's almost double the amount of Wind Fury, and this remains to be seen, especially with the new information about Wind Fury and Rogue Strikes. So I mean, we don't know. Big answer to that question is we don't know. Okay, Cadiz asks in my direct message. He said, "What is the initial plan for once server launches? Who will funnel silver to the guilds so the guild can be created?" So, I mean, if everybody sends me 1 silver, it'll be made, Like, I only need 10 people. It doesn't take that much to make a guild. 10 signatures and, like, 10 silver, and it's made. I may be playing a warrior, and if I'm playing a warrior, I'm going to have a lot less gold than if I'm playing a druid. So, I mean, obviously it's appreciated, but mail is instant, so just as soon as you get your first silver, just mail it to me, and the guild will be created. Don't worry about it. Guild enchanters, yes. Who will be the first enchanter, or will we need to funnel low-level greens and enchant materials so we can get wands crafted? So this is something that needs to be decided by the casters. caster DPS. Like ideally, somebody who has a lot of time, somebody who doesn't mind doing it, doesn't mind leveling a little bit slower. Like somebody either who has a lot of time or very little time. They don't expect to be around for the first clears or something. What I recommend doing is, and I'm not going to hold, I'm not going to hold this against you if you do it, but if you take your time to level and you, for example, get your enchanting up to where you're making wands, and you just sit in the starting zone and sell wands until you get to 10 gold, and you take that 10 gold and you just play the auction house for the first week of the game, you're going to be rich, and you're going to help progression in a big way, potentially. 10 gold in the first 8 hours of the server is a lot of money. If you can like snipe big BOEs because you're reinvesting that gold in the auction house over and over, that could be big. So one potential strategy would be to have one caster with enchanting, or anybody with enchanting, in each starting zone where they're casters. So you do Dorotar and you would do Brill. You'd sit there and you just sell wands and trade chat. And you could sit with layering. There was information that came out that you can actually just sit on a vendor in Orgrimmar and just invite a different person in a different layer, and the vendor will have the limited sell of lesser magic essence on the vendor every time you go to a different layer. So something to think about. There's some kind of cheesy things you can do with it, but there's ways to make a lot of money at launch if you don't care about brushing to 60. But as far as the question about who the first enchanter will be, it's likely going to be, I'm considering personally to go enchanting at the very beginning. The main reason is I like to go enchanting because I know as long as I'm playing, the patterns will exist in the guild. Like that's the number one reason. And as long as I'm playing, the guild will exist, right? So I don't ever have to worry about, okay, this guy's a guild enchanter, he gets the spell damage to weapon enchant, and then he quits, a month later. And then I lose that pattern forever, which is a really rare pattern. Could be the only one that faction one ends up dropping. That would be really unlucky. So usually it's somebody I can really trust that I've known for a long time. That'll be the first enchanter. And if you plan on going enchanting, you're probably going to be at minimum second in line for enchanting. So I don't recommend going enchanting unless you really like that profession for whatever aspect, the social aspects or whatever. Also, if you're new to vanilla, you can disenchant any item at level 1 enchanting. So you are probably well off to just make a bank alt and have enchanting on it. Okay, I have another question. From Ungar. He says, how is Guildbank going to work? Guildbank will it's kind of up in the air. I've considered a couple things. Like I just have the Guildbank all on my account because there is no Guildbank in the game. And account sharing which is what normally happens on private servers, is we make a bank alt account, and we share that among all the officers, and they can log in and trade things out. I don't know how viable that is this time around, because it basically means somebody's paying for that account. Now we could use donations to pay for that account or something, or we could redirect funds from maybe the merch somehow. I don't know how it'll work out, but if account sharing is bannable, so we don't want to get our Guildbank banned, so it may be just best to have it all on my account. But alternatively, I can split up things and delegate. So I could be like, okay, Freck is going to be the Fiery Core Lava Core guy. I'm going to be the BOE raw materials guy. And go further down, like somebody else is the consumable guy, and somebody else is like the auction house seller or whatever. I honestly can't answer that question right now. I really wish they would implement the Guildbank like as it was in TBC. I know like a lot of people are like against changes and stuff like that, but this would just better for the game, honestly.
Blizzard does that bullshit where you get the IP lock on your accounts if you get onto accounts other than yours anyway. So You'd have
Right.
to go into your email and lock them out, and then they'd have to do the same thing every time you swap accounts to a quote unquote bank account that somebody else will be paying for, and that just increased the chance of getting a IP ban on those for account sharing. So it's probably not a good idea. It's not like private servers, it's not that easy.
I
There's
mean,
gonna be multiple raid teams, so you're gonna be getting like different mats. I'm sure eventually it's just gonna be spread out into there'll be different bankers, and the people that occupy those roles will be defined as the process as the weeks go forward, the months.
Lil M asks, what are you expecting with people rolling alts? So it's kind of a vague question, but like if people want to have alts, it's just better for the guild. Like anything you can do that makes you play the game more, I'm absolutely for. Especially if it keeps you interested in the game. If you wanna raid on both alts and we have two raid teams and we have a spot for that class, then by all means. But if you're trying to play, like let's say you go from playing a Resto Shaman to playing a Rogue, like, and you want to main swap or something, then not likely. Like it's a lot harder to swallow that pill for the guild because a Resto Shaman is infinitely more valuable than a Rogue. But doesn't mean that we can't like throw you tier 1 and tier 2 every now and then or whatever on your Rogue. I mean, it's a really open-ended question, but short answer is we care about the pilot of the character, not the character itself. For the most part, obviously, we're not gonna take like imagine we have this warlock and he gets an F tier and then he decides he wants to play a mage. We're not gonna give that his mage an F tier over other people who haven't even gotten one F tier. Like that wouldn't be responsible with. I mean, there's some things that we have to be reasonable about, but for the most part, um, we don't have to you don't have to worry about alts. If you want to play an alt, you can play an alt. Okay, so Poseidon asks, didn't they add a cooldown on layer swapping? Yeah, but I mean, you could bypass that easily. So imagine there are 2 or 3 people coordinating on this gold scheme. You have multiple, so you have up to 10 characters you can be buying items on. So you just go park them in front of the vendor, log in, invite somebody, swap layers, whatever. Additionally, you could just have everybody who goes to that vendor just mail the item to the crafter. I mean, there's so much you could do. Cheese layering, like. All right. I'm gonna take one more question or 2 more questions, and then I'm gonna end the stream and prep for the podcast. Anybody has anything? Again, if you guys have any questions or something that you want me to answer, like behind closed doors or whatever, you always send me a message any time of day. A lot of people, for some reason, are afraid to send me messages because they see my do not disturb sign. Why I have do not disturb on always is because I get anywhere from 30 to 60 unique Discord conversations per day. So don't take it personally. Don't be afraid to message me. All right. Also, if you're part of leveling team, you guys got to come up with a cool leveling name, and we might have some kind of like leaderboard for whatever team hits 60 first or something like that. I don't know. It'll be cool, like a little guild lore, guild RP, or whatever you want to call it. Also, the guild's RP story is basically we're a clan of orcs that broke off from the Burning Blade, and we're trying to summon Sargeras to the world. So we're just killing and pillaging and destroying whatever anybody, doesn't matter. So if anybody asks you, that's what our RP story is. We're not RP guild, but basically don't roll anything that's not an orc. because the racials are better. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream for a little bit. I gotta prep the slides for the podcast and get set up with Ooze. How welcome are Mexicans, foreigners, Trump level, anything against not so good spoken English and second language? So, we don't do politics in this guild. We don't do racism. We don't do any of that. Like, I'm not saying that we are like PC, but basically, if you're saying something that's going to cause a problem with somebody, it's not worth it. Just don't be an asshole. It's pretty simple. Don't be an asshole, and the guild will do better off. You know. We've played with people with heavy language barriers. We play with Chinese people, who are some of the best players I've ever played with, most dependable people we've ever played with, the most hardcore, dedicated people. We play with Chinese people that I play with again in a heartbeat. We've played with people that are completely clueless and make no effort to communicate through their language barrier, and those people are miserable to play with, and they probably will naturally self-eliminate from the guild. So your negativity and like racism or insults are not necessary, really. This guild, like most things, solve themselves naturally when it comes to toxicity. If you can't control yourself while you're playing this game, like I don't care what you do in private channels, I don't care what you do outside of the guild. That's your business. But when you're in the guild and you're representing yourself in public channels and you're wearing our guild tag, you will abide by these rules. I won't tolerate it. Also, doxing. If you dox, that is dox anybody in the guild. That is 100%. You're done with the guild. Period. You will not ever rejoin. We'll never unban you. You'll cut all ties and burn all bridges. It's something I've had to do in the past.
Sandwich man.
What's doxing?
Google it. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream and mute Discord. So I gotta prep. I gotta really focus because I only got about 53 minutes to get all these slides made. But
I'm going to work.
what up, Omp? All right, stream's going offline.